Week 4 of the NFL season kicks off between the Seattle Seahawks and the Arizona Cardinals tonight in what should be a great, hard fought division matchup. But ultimately, we need to decide whether or not we are playing certain players over others, depending on their matchups, injury situation, or whether or not they're just not performing up to the standard we need in our fantasy football lineups. That's why having started sit advice just like this and matchups you should be targeting is exactly why you're going to have a great week and win your week. Let's get right into the week 4 start and sit guide here on Blitz Fantasy Football. What is up, everybody? My name is Blitz Link, and today we are doing a week 4 start and sit guide. And I mean, it's been great so far. The season's already flying by. 3 weeks are gone. We're already in week 4, but it's great. I mean, I hope a lot of you guys are cashing in our weekly start and sit articles. We're actually hitting close to 70% of our picks right now, whether that's a player hitting a boom performance that's a start or a bust performance that's a sit. So I'm all about that right now. We're doing really well with these lists, but let's get right in the video without any further fluff. Quarterbacks, let's start with them. Caleb Williams is the first one that I am firing up in all my lineups. He is a must start this week, and he might be a must start going forward. He has been great to start the season. He's averaging 23.4 points per game in Ben Johnson's system, and he was the quarterback one overall against the Cowboys last week. 298 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. It was a breakout week we've been all looking forward to seeing in Ben Johnson's offense with Caleb Williams taking that step forward. We finally saw it, and he didn't have any pressure. 0 sacks taken against the Cowboys. It was everything mixed into one. Now, do I think this offense production will last the entire season? I'm not necessarily sure, but I think against the Raiders, it's an incredibly favorable matchup where they sit bottom 10 in passing yards and passer rating to open the season. Caleb Williams is a must start top 5 quarterback heading into week 4. Geno Smith is the next one, and sure, his efficiency metrics aren't necessarily the best in terms of what he's producing to start the season, but he ranks 4th in passing yards and is 8th in attempts to start the year, while also ranking 4th in yards per attempt, which is really good. Last week, despite the rough loss, he's coming off a 289-yard performance with 3 touchdowns against the Commanders, and he's now had 2 weeks over 20 points. That is streamer worthy for me. He gets the Bears defense this week that has allowed massive performances to Jared Goff and JJ McCarthy. Sure, they shut down Dak Prescott last week, but Chicago's defense has been a good target for opposing fantasy quarterbacks this season. I think that without Jalen Johnson, this defense will be targeted consistently in streaming matchups, and Geno Smith is no exception to this. A really strong play this week heading into week 4. Jordan Love is our final must start of the week, and it was a really rough showing in Cleveland in week 3. I mean, the fact that they lost that game and, 13 unanswered points was a little bit crazy, but now he gets a much better matchup against the Cowboys, who, like I mentioned against Caleb Williams, could not rush the passer. They allowed the quarterback one overall performance, and we saw Russell Wilson the week before that absolutely shred this Cowboys defense after slowing down the Eagles on opening night. So I think with Jordan Love, you have to feel confident in the fact that they've allowed 750 passing yards and 7 touchdowns over their last 2. And sure, the Packers offense has some offensive line injuries. Jaden Reed's hurt right now, but you have a great coach in Matt LaFleur, and it should be a get-right game against a plus matchup in the Dallas Cowboys. Quarterbacks I'm sitting, we're going to start with the Dallas Cowboy, and it is Dak Prescott. Micah Parsons, his former teammate, is going to be all over him in this upcoming matchup. The Cowboys have offensive line injuries. CeeDee Lamb is expected to miss this game, and Dak's just struggled this season in terms of fantasy football production. He only has 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions to open the season, and sure, he's looked really good at times this year, but it's not necessarily translating into fantasy production just yet. Without his key weapons at CeeDee Lamb, the offensive line, the Green Bay Packers are a matchup nightmare, especially for a team that's allowing the 3rd fewest points to quarterbacks. Make sure Dak's on your bench this week. Aaron Rodgers is the next guy, and sure, he had a very solid performance last week. He was able to cash in and some streaming value, but he is just not very good. I think it's safe to say to start the year. He's bottom 10 in completion percentage, over expected catchable target rate, air yards per attempt, and he's relying on an unsustainable touchdown rate to improve his fantasy numbers. The biggest thing is Pittsburgh outside of DK Metcalf does not have much offensive weaponry, and the running game is not good to start the season. The offensive line is also not one of the better units in the NFL. Pair all that together, you're getting a Minnesota defense that just absolutely dominated the Bengals last week, did really good against Michael Penix, holding him to a limited game as well. Caleb Williams struggled against him in week 1. So it's a really tough matchup. And they also have the second highest pressure rate in the NFL. So I think Minnesota versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm avoiding it. And you'll see another player on this list that I'm avoiding as well in that matchup. Daniel Jones is our final sit of the week. And this one might come as a surprise. I mean, he's been dominant at the start of the year. The Colts have scored touchdowns on 14 of their 16 drives to open up the year. And he's averaging 22.7 points to open the season. But it's more about the pressure rate the Rams bring. Los Angeles is 5th in pressure rate this season, and Jones, when he's historically been pressured, has a passer rating under 70. So pair all that together, I think it's a little bit concerning. Yeah, he had a great game against the Denver Broncos a few weeks back, but I don't know if I'm going to completely say Daniel Jones, I got to have him in my lineup type guy. I think there's other streaming options like Caleb Williams, Geno Smith that could plug and play in your lineup that I'd rather start over Daniel Jones in a tough matchup against the Rams. Let's get into our running backs to start right here. We're going to kick it off with Breece Hall. Sure, he's had 2 quiet games under 10 points the last 2 weeks, despite having a monster performance to open the season, but it is a prime bounce back week against the Miami Dolphins, who have allowed the 8th most fantasy points to running backs, giving up 19 plus PPR points to Rhamondre Stevenson and James Cook in consecutive weeks. He himself posted 18 points against Miami to end the 2024 season. So everything is working well. If Justin Fields is back too, it should improve his efficiency. Breece Hall, you got to have him in your lineup this week. J.K. Dobbins is our next one. He's been one of the more consistent running backs to open the season. He scored at least 14.8 PPR points in every single game. He's averaging 15 touches and nearly 79 yards, which is really strong. And which is surprising is he actually ranks first among all running backs in explosive run rate. He's holding off RJ Harvey with an over 70% snap share. That is, his usage is strong. Harvey's actually seeing decreased touches as the season goes on. And then this week, he gets the Cincinnati Bengals, who have allowed the 2nd most points per game to running backs and have already had multiple 15-plus point outings allowed at the running back position. So as far as J.K. Dobbins goes as a must-start, he's about as safe as it gets as a must-start. The guy that's a little bit riskier that, I don't know, I trust him, but I understand if you can't. TreVeyon Henderson, and here's why he's riskier. We have no clue what his volume is going to be, and he's let a lot of people down to open up the season. But here's the thing. Rhamondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson fumbled 3 times last week. After those 3 fumbles, Henderson earned an 88% snap share and had 14 touches. Sure, he didn't turn the touches into gold like many of us expected, but the Steelers are also a pretty solid defense. Henderson provides a safe floor with his passing volume that's been there since day one. Now he has the potential for more touches and increased snap share, and he gets the Panthers, who are allowing 5.7 yards per carry and the 3rd most rushing yards in the NFL. I am absolutely buying into TreVeyon Henderson as a solid DFS play, a flex play, plug and play at running back for injury. This is the matchup you want to target if you're a TreVeyon Henderson owner coming off the Rhamondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson fumble gate. Heading into the running backs to sit, David Montgomery is our first one, and everybody's going to be like, oh, so you're going to start TreVeyon Henderson over David Montgomery this week? Yeah, I actually think I am, because David Montgomery is going in after a really strong performance, 164 total yards, 2 touchdowns, but the touches are just not there for them. He's actually seen 13 or fewer touches in 2 of his 3 games to open up the year. Now he gets the Cleveland Browns, who haven't allowed a single run over 10-plus yards this year. Josh Jacobs was held to 30 yards. Derrick Henry held to 23 yards. The Browns are a matchup nightmare for running backs. You have to start Jahmyr Gibbs, but you don't have to start David Montgomery. Montgomery is completely reliant on positive game script, a plus matchup, and touches. If he doesn't have those 3 without his receiving work, he is just a guy I can't trust in my starting lineup. Sure, in standard formats, go ahead, throw him out there, see if he can have a nice day. But in PPR, there's better options to go with this week than David Montgomery. Isiah Pacheco is our next guy, and he has been such a disappointment so far this year. After a lot of people said he was back in the preseason, he's just struggled. He hasn't topped 6 points, and this was despite 10 carries, 45 yards, better efficiency against a plus matchup in the Giants. He just doesn't have a big enough workload. Kareem Hunt has already seized all the short yardage, goal line opportunities, playing more on 3rd down. Brashard Smith's role increased last week for the Chiefs as well. Now he gets the Ravens, who have historically been strong against running backs, and I know that they're having a rough start to the year, but they're also top 3 in limiting yards before contact to open up this year. So I think with Isiah Pacheco, despite a potential strong matchup, you just have to avoid him. You just can't trust him at this point. DeAndre Swift is a player that's also losing trust for fantasy football managers. Despite ranking 10th in opportunity share to open the season, he only has a 12% missed tackle rate, and he sits at the RB 24 right now. Not exactly ideal, and he has a strong matchup still. Like the Raiders are, a little bit more stingy than other defenses, but I was talking about last week 16 carries, 78 yards against the Cowboys, not good enough. Now he gets the stingier matchup in the Las Vegas Raiders, who, despite the Jeremy McNichols 60-yard touchdown run, they've actually held backfields under 55 yards in 2 of their 3 games. So they have a better run defense than a pass defense. Swift, great volume, not a great player. I can't trust him in my lineup. He's just a risky play this week. All right, let's get into the wide receivers that we need to start here. And let's start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers rookie phenom, Emeka Egbuka. This guy's an absolute dog. I mean, he's scored at least 12.9 PPR points in every game to open the season, and he's already scored 3 times. Great start to his rookie campaign. We don't typically see rookies dominate like he has out of the gate. Mike Evans is landing himself on IR with his hamstring injury. Chris Godwin, who knows if he's going to be able to go this week. Emeka Egbuka is a gotta have him in your lineup start, especially going forward. He leads Tampa Bay in receiving yards, touchdowns, passer rating when targeted. Now he gets the Philadelphia Eagles, who have really struggled against receivers this year, allowing 4 receivers to go over 14 points. Baker Mayfield threw for over 300 yards last season and 2 touchdowns against them when their defense was in much better shape than they currently are. So I think that Emeka Egbuka, like you just got to put him in your lineup, regardless of if you think Philly has been a tough matchup historically for receivers. Emeka Egbuka, got to have him. He's in for a monster week. Jakobi Meyers is our next guy. He had a down week last week. He only had 9.3 points despite a pretty favorable matchup against the Washington Commanders, and he's actually only failed to go under 63 receiving yards 0 times to open the year. So that's pretty good. But he leads the Raiders receivers with his 22.6% target share and 2 yards per route run. Chicago's defense sets up perfectly for Meyers as they run 2 high shell safeties at the 3rd highest rate. And when Meyers faces that coverage, his target rate jumps from 27% to 39%, making it a must start, have him in your lineup type matchup. The Bears are actually 3rd most points allowed to receivers as well. This is a slam dunk. Jakobi Meyers is in for a great week. The next one is Keenan Allen and other Chargers pass catchers. Keenan Allen has been really good to open the season. He scored at least 17.1 PPR points in every game so far, while seeing over 9 targets on average in every game. That's elite numbers. He's turned back the clock, and now he gets the Giants defense that has allowed the 2nd most fantasy points to wide receivers and 5 different players to top 15.3 points already. I think regardless of if it's Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston, or Lad McConkey, you have to start them this week based on the matchup and based on how the Chargers passing game has performed to start the season. They're all smash starts for me. Wide receivers to sit. Let's start with T. Higgins. T. Higgins is beyond cooked in fantasy football with the Joe Burrow injury and him sidelined. Week 4 is not going to look much better against the Broncos defense. To open the season, outside of his 42-yard touchdown in week 2, T. Higgins actually only has 6 catches for 62 yards in the year, averaging fewer than 3 receptions and 35 yards per game. That is not elite by any means. Jake Browning has struggled, throwing 5 interceptions in 2 games. Denver's secondary has allowed just 1 touchdown to wide receivers this year and a 56% catch rate to receivers. Everything is so bad for T. Higgins right now. And unfortunately for the Bengals, when their quarterback gets hurt, they can't afford to service 2 strong wide receivers in fantasy football. T. Higgins is a sit basically every week going forward for me. I can't trust him at all. So T. Higgins this week against an even tougher matchup than he'll normally get, got to have him on your bench. Calvin Ridley's the next guy who's been a massive disappointment to open the year, and you cannot trust him in your starting lineups anymore. He has 8 catches on 21 targets through 3 weeks, and you think, man, 21 targets is really good. It's just empty right now. They're just not converting like they should be, him and Cam Ward. He's only averaging 37 yards per game, and he scored fewer than 9 points in every single outing this year. His efficiency metrics are also alarming as well. He's ranking bottom 5 in separation and route win rate. He's just not consistently creating space, and I think his age might finally be catching up to him. Now he gets a Houston secondary that's allowed the 8th fewest points. 2 wide receivers this year. He gets Derrick Stingley, Kamari Lassiter, and Cam Ward has struggled to show consistency. So Calvin Ridley, can't have him in your lineup this week. DK Metcalf's the final guy you got to have on your bench. He scored in back-to-back games, sure, very nice, but everything else is just not looking great for DK Metcalf to open the year. He's averaging just 45 receiving yards per contest with a 19% target share. His per route efficiency is even more concerning. He's ranked last among qualifying wide receivers in separation. He's also outside the top 50 in route win rate. Absolutely brutal metrics. Minnesota, who has been dominant to start the season on the secondary side of things, is third in limiting wide receiver production in the fantasy football category. Jamar Chase had a quiet day. Drake London has had a quiet day against that defense. DK Metcalf is in for a really bad performance. You cannot trust him in your starting lineups this week. Tight ends to start, Juwan Johnson is our first one. I might be one of the biggest Juwan Johnson truthers out there. The guy is absolutely producing at such a high level, and the Saints offense is going to continue to throw. He ranks second among tight ends in targets, receptions, red zone looks, and he's sitting fifth in yards with 176. He's got a 23.1% target share, and the Saints are going to continue to be trailing. He is going to get plenty of volume. The Seahawks were a tough matchup for this team last week. Should be a little bit more favorable against the Bills. And Johnson's floor is 11.1 PPR points. He's yet to go under that mark just yet this season. So Juwan Johnson, got to have him in your lineup in week 4. Jake Ferguson's our next guy, and Fergie is a must start with CeeDee Lamb out. He hauled in 13 receptions last week, which is the second most by a tight end in Cowboys history, which is crazy to think about. He has 32 targets through 3 weeks, which leads all tight ends. He's actually the tight end 1 in PPR right now, despite not scoring a touchdown. Everything is going well for Jake Ferguson. I think defenses might key in on him just a little bit more, but Ferguson is a tight end 1 going forward. And this matchup, like, you got to think Green Bay is around the middle of the pack in terms of tight ends overall, but they've actually allowed the third most tight end yards so far this season. So with Fergie, got to have him in your lineup. He is a great play this week. Hunter Henry is the other one. He was a must start last week for us as well. And then he finished with an 11 target, 90-yard performance and 2 touchdowns against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He has been Drake May's favorite target since he took over as the quarterback, leading the Patriots in consistency in terms of targets, yards, everything, and then red zone usage as well, which is a great sign for his long-term viability as a starter. Carolina has allowed the most receiving yards to tight ends this year, and opposing players of the position have consistently found success against them over the last 2 seasons. So with Henry scoring at least 10.6 PPR points in 2 of his last 3 games, he is a lineup lock. Got to have him. So Hunter Henry, great play this week. Tight ends I'm sitting. Let's start with David Njoku, who has been one of the more disappointing tight ends to open the year. And it's not like the Browns aren't targeting the tight end position. It has been more because of the emergence of Harold Fanta Jr. Njoku ranks tight end 22 in terms of points per game. He's still running plenty of routes, but his target share is only 13.2%, and he hasn't seen a red zone target to open the season. He's only averaging 39 yards per game, and he's fewer than 1.2 yards per route run. So with David Njoku, brutal. It gets even worse. He's facing the Lions, who have Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph, who have been blanketing tight ends for over a year now. Avoid David Njoku at all costs in week 4. The next guy is Zach Ertz. Jaden Daniels or no Jaden Daniels. Really hard to trust him in this matchup. He's a consistent producer. He'll get you 3 catches, 30 yards, and if he scores a touchdown, it's a good week. If he doesn't, it's a bad week. He now has under 4 receptions in 2 or 3 weeks. In 2 or 3 weeks, he hasn't been good. So favorable schedule to open year. Gets even worse against the Falcons, who allow the fewest points to tight ends to open the season. They have only allowed 23 yards to the position this year. A really bad matchup for Ertz. Make sure that Ertz is not in your starting lineup this week. Final tight end that we're sitting, Mark Andrews. And Andrews just cashed in with a 91-yard performance and 2 touchdowns, but that's been the exception this year. In the other 2 games, he's only had 2 total catches for 7 yards. And the Chiefs, after being really bad last year against tight ends, have actually been really good this year, allowing the 3rd fewest fantasy points to the position. Historically, Mark Andrews has also struggled against Kansas City with just 108 yards and no touchdowns in his last 5 regular season matchups. So Mark Andrews, tough matchup, hasn't necessarily been consistent this year. Not trusting him heading into this week. Let's get into the defenses here. As far as defenses I'm going with, got to start the Houston Texans against Cam Ward and a struggling Houston Texans offensive line. 3rd most sacks, 2nd highest pressure rate allowed. Must start Houston Texans. Buffalo Bills in the same mark. New Orleans is just scoring 15.7 points per game. That's not going to cut it. Fire up the Bills with confidence against the New Orleans Saints. The Chargers are the next one. Rookie quarterback in Jackson Dart. And the Chargers themselves have been one of the better defenses in fantasy football to open up the season, so got to have them. Defenses, I'm sitting the Los Angeles Rams. I know I mentioned Daniel Jones as a sit candidate, but I think the Colts offense is good. Should be a good game going forward. And the Rams, we'll see what happens as they got torched by the Eagles in the second half. The Ravens are the next one. This could be a little surprising, but I know they struggle this season and people want to target Kansas City's offense because they haven't been producing. Don't do it. The Chiefs only have one turnover this season. The Ravens are lacking pass rush. Not a great option. Kickers, Kaimi Fairbairn's a great option for Houston against Tennessee. Should be a field goal fest in that one. Spencer Schrader should get some looks against the Rams this week as well. And then kickers, I'm sitting Cam Little against for the Jacksonville Jaguars against the 49ers, who haven't allowed a kicker to go over 7 points this year. And then Evan McPherson. It's hard to trust him with the Bengals offense sputtering like it is. So really bad start in general. Overall, this is the week 4 start and sit guide. If you guys are interested, tune in Sunday at 10:30 Eastern time. I am doing a live start and sit Q&A, so make sure you tune into that. Turn on notifications already up on the YouTube if you want to set a reminder, and pre-fire some comments and we'll answer them on the show. If you enjoyed this comment, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment down below if you need any sort of start and sit advice. My name is Blitz Link, and I'll catch you guys next time on Blitz Fantasy Football.